Today is Tuesday, April 5th. Today is Tuesday, thank you, April 5th, and I'm calling to order the regular subcommittee of the Water Issues Subcommittee. So shall we have roll call?
Chairperson Rusing?
Here.
Member Montoya?
Here.
And let the record reflect that Member Sishka is excused today.
Okay. Public comment. Public comment will be accepted following each agenda item and is limited to 3 minutes. Please complete a comment card and return it to the city clerk. Speakers will be called in the order received, and I'd just like to emphasize the 3 minutes is just a guideline. We obviously aren't going to cut anyone off at 3 minutes. And I also like to have an announcement here. April is Water Awareness Month in Arizona. So I'd like everyone to be aware of our water conservation. Don't waste this precious resource. And when you're with friends and family, bring it into a topic of your conversation and let people know that it's a precious, finite resource that we shouldn't be wasting here in Arizona. And so moving on to item 4, discussion and action items. A, we have approval of the March 1st, 2022 meeting minutes. Do I hear any discussions about the minutes?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 1, 2022 minutes as presented.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Minutes approved. Let's move on to item B, water service application number WSA 21-024 submitted by Cactus Mobile Ranch Home Community Association, LLC, Prescott, location APN 11-4-06-104H, et cetera, et cetera. Let's start the discussion here. Thank you. Well, I guess I could.
Oh, yes, okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Good morning. Kay Sitta, Water Resource Project Manager in Public Works. I'm here today to discuss the application for water for the annexation of Cactus Mobile Ranch, water service agreement number 21-024. The property owner is Cactus Mobile Ranch Home Community, LLC. The applicant is Murray Sarkey, and he is here with us today. The mobile home park was constructed in 1968. There is a single-family residence that's now being used for office and also for the manager of the park, and that was constructed in 1943. The mobile home park has been on city sewer since December of 2017, and at the Planning and Zoning Commission annexation request on February 24th of this year, it was unanimously passed by P&Z 5-0. The water demand analysis, they're asking for 6.36 acre-feet per year. And I want to show you a location map. Oh, close it up there, okay. Oh, thank you, Gwen. Okay. So the mobile home park is near the intersection of North State Route 89 and South State Route 69. It's just south of the Prescott Cemetery and east of the Prescottonian Motel. And you can see that Gurley Street and Sheldon Street merge near this area, and it's also near the Yavapai College Library Prescott campus. So I hope that gives you all an idea of where we're located here. Oops. Yeah, okay. I'm not getting it, Joe. Where? The very top bar. Thank you. So we do have my eyes aren't that good. I believe this is the map showing the location of the fire hydrants. And there will be 3 of them, I believe. And so much trouble with this. Okay, here we go. And then here's a site plan with the location that shows where all the mobile homes are located. Does anybody have any questions about the application?
Chair, I have a few questions.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Kay, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. So if I understand, I met and talked with Gwen a little bit about this project the other day. This is proposed for annexation into the city as well, essentially, is how I understand. Like, this is part of a part and parcel with their annexation process. They're seeking the annexation to access the city water through this application.
Correct.
Okay. And the other question I have, in doing so, they're required to basically abandon their wells that are on this property as well.
Yes, they are. And I forgot to show that. We will get quite a bit of water for that.
Yeah, my notes reflect that we'll receive a net of about 20 acre feet of water a year on this annexation.
Yes, we will. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Because we'll be giving them I have 6.46, but it's 6.36. I mean, the difference isn't that useful to me, but so let's just call it almost 6.5 acre feet a year. They're pulling it. We're going to receive their well credit essentially for 26.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the next question I have, and this isn't necessarily specifically water related, but because of how we allocate water in dwelling units, in this case, I guess my question is about, there was a bit of a zoning capacity to match the zoning that happened, that exists within the county right now to match to the zoning structure within the city. Can you, or I see Mr. Worley in the audience over there, can either of you speak to the zoning capacity?
Well, they did change the zoning. They voted twice to change the zoning on at the February 24th meeting, yes.
Hi, George.
Morning, how are you doing?
Good.
So the request that accompanied the annexation was a rezoning. The initial zoning from the county would leave them as a non-conforming use. They're a non-conforming use in the county. Bringing them in at that same zoning is how you typically do an annexation, but then you rezone to something that's compatible with city zoning requirements. So a rezoning to multifamily was part of the request to us. And that rezoning to multifamily makes them a compatible zoning use rather than creating a non-compatible use which violates our general plan and the land development code.
Right. So it's multifamily, and am I correct in understanding it's multifamily high density?
Correct.
Okay. And this goes back to the water service application part of this. So it's multifamily high density, but we're allowing for 52 dwelling units. Is that correct? That's part of this application?
Correct.
I hear Gwen saying that's correct. So I just want to make sure. All right. So my sense is that even though this is multifamily high density, that there's no, if this particular owner or applicant, or a subsequent applicant or owner of this property came back and decided that they wanted to do, say, 150 units, and not do a mobile home park, but instead do maybe an apartment complex there, they would have to resubmit for more water. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. They would also have to submit a revised site plan and go through a site plan process, presuming the current draft of the water policy gets adopted. There's a whole process involved in that.
And when I look at the site plan that was included in the supplemental materials, and maybe the applicant can speak to this a little bit too, but it doesn't look like there's much room to add anymore on this site plan anyways.
I think they have a little bit of room, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Sharkey could speak to that, to add a few more units, but it would only be a few more.
Okay.
Mr. Worley, I have a few questions about the zoning. In my previous conversations, well, first of all, I go to every single planning and zoning meeting every month for the last 2 years. So February rolls around, and the February meeting was canceled, rescheduled, and I somehow got dropped from the email chain. So I was never notified, so I missed the hearing on this particular property. So to me, this looks like an upzoning, because why wasn't it zoned more compatible to what it is? And why wasn't it multifamily medium density instead of high density?
So again, when we rezone properties, we're bound by two requirements. One is the general plan. The other is the land development code. The mobile home park, the manufactured home park use, as it is in the county, is a nonconforming use. Bringing it into the city with the same zoning equivalent as the county zoning makes it a nonconforming use. By doing so, we create the nonconformance because we're annexing them. The land development code says that the first, in the hierarchy of zones, the first zone where they're a compatible use, where they're allowed by right, is multifamily high. So that's the lowest level of zoning that you could put on the property to allow the use as a permitted use. Otherwise, it's still a nonconformance, and we've violated the land development code and the general plan's guidance by creating a nonconforming situation.
So George, if I understand what you just said correctly, you're saying that if we had done multifamily medium density, that would have violated both the general plan and the land development code?
It would have left the manufactured home park as a
Non-conforming use.
non-conforming use,
Which would
rather than making it compatible with the zoning requirements. The limitation on the use of the property is still controlled by the zoning, still controlled by our site plan review process and any other conditions that either this particular applicant may want to do or future applicant may want to do. They still have to follow all of the other rules, including water allocation rules, site plan approval rules, and potentially rezoning again if should they choose to do something different.
George, let me interrupt here. And I understand we don't have a zone for mobile home parks.
We have an overlay for mobile home parks that could go in some areas, but it doesn't allow a park. It allows manufactured homes on individual lots, so it doesn't
Okay.
apply in this case.
So,
it has
okay.
to be multifamily zoning to be a conforming use.
So theoretically, the owner, overnight, once we annex him, he's, in my mind, being upzoned, and he could sell the property at a profit to a new owner who already has the legal right to put in, like, say, 200 units, apartments, and then they're going to come to us for more water. And the question is, if it's already zoned high-density, multifamily apartment complexes, then the question is, are we legally obligated? Can we say no to that person when they come back and want more water?
Yeah, first and foremost, the property hasn't been rezoned yet. It'll come to the council on the 26th. So
Right.
you're going to have 3 votes, I guess. The first one's going to be, do you want to annex? And that comes with the translational zoning that's compatible with the city. The second is the request for the rezone. We're trying to clean this up so they don't have a non-conforming use. What you can do at the council meeting is tie the rezoning to the site plan.
Which we commonly do.
Which we commonly do. And that'll take care of any concerns you have for them kind of flipping the property.
So given that circumstance, someone coming in wanting to do something other than a manufactured home park would have to come back through with a brand-new site plan and a re-review by the city planning commission and city council.
So I was going to say, they would have to, George, they would have to go through the whole process again. They'd have to start a P&Z, they'd have to come back. If they were seeking more water, they'd have to come back to this
And more
subcommittee.
water as well, correct. So there would be 3 additional steps necessary, 3 different
And what I
approvals
hear,
necessary.
Matt, what I think I hear you saying is that if they were to do that, they're not assured by right to get that. Is that correct?
Correct. They'll be, the next purchaser, assuming there is one, will still be bound by the site plan that exists. If that's how the council approves the rezoning on April 26th.
And since this is an annexation, do you think we need a development agreement that is going to
No,
clarify a few things?
nope.
Okay. Do you,
The only reason you'd have a development agreement is the city was willing to do something for the applicant. The applicant really doesn't need the city to do anything for him,
Yeah.
other than, and you'll hear from him, I think he presents a pretty compelling case that what he has is what he's going to keep.
I would say it does seem like concerns around the multifamily high density aside, which I think my concerns have been fairly allayed by what Matt said and what George has said. I think this represents a net positive to the city from a water perspective. So, I mean, there is that. I mean,
There's the additional fact that it provides a type of housing that we have a need for. Presuming it remains a manufactured home park, they generally are more affordable than a single-family home, and they provide a type of housing that we are short of and have a lot of demand for. And they're already using city services. Our fire department responds, our police department responds.
they do commercial trash, though. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that. Chair, I just want to point out that the applicant has put up his hand a couple times to talk. So maybe we should hear from him instead of speculating.
yeah,
I'd appreciate it. So-
yeah. Oh, thank you. But just give me a minute to kind of give a big overview. Prescott's dotted with these mobile home parks in the Pines, and it's part of our character. And as you are, you're totally correct. It is affordable housing. And, we always think of ourselves, oh, gee, Prescott, we don't have affordable housing, but we actually do when you look at these mobile home parks. And when I was a kid, we lived in Tempe, and we used to come up and stay in a mobile home park. It was the one out on White Spar, and to get out of the heat. And one summer, there was a hepatitis outbreak because they were on well and septic, and there was contamination, and we had to boil water. So I look at this as a public safety, public health issue, because the sewer was put in because on septic, I noticed it's uphill from a big wash, and the drainage area will go right into Watson Lake, and we need to keep E. coli out of that lake. We got enough E. coli as it is in the lake. And then I understand the applicant is hauling water, and so having to haul water, it creates, a public safety issue.
One addition to that, that's a great point, the public safety aspect of it is something that was discussed at the Planning Commission, perhaps less of a water issue, but it was certainly there. As part of meeting our minimum requirements, not only to rezone it to make it conforming, but also to meet infrastructure requirements, they will be putting in the fire hydrants that Kay showed you on the plans, along with water infrastructure within the park that doesn't exist today in a form that matches city requirements. So you have an upgrade in the safety of the park just through that step as well.
So I see this annexation as a whole as a benefit to the community. In fact, last night I drove through the mobile home park about 8 o'clock at night. It was quiet. People had their porch lights on. It seemed like it was fully occupied. There were a lot of cars, and it's a great location. In fact, it's close to the VA in case there's some veterans living there that need services. But like I said, the only fly in the ointment was the, what I call the upzoning. But if we could somehow, if the applicant agrees to it, tie it to a site plan and make that part of our motion.
Yeah, I think that would have to, if I'm hearing Matt correctly, that happens at the annexation process, probably not at this.
Right, it'll happen when you consider the rezoning.
Okay.
And have we uploaded that into, no, this is the 26th, so
Is it
the
next?
meeting's going to be the 26th.
would be the
So
The
we have some time.
26th, okay.
So one of the things you can add to your staff report is, you know,
Okay.
you have the option of tying it to a site plan.
Okay.
Should we hear from the applicant?
Yes, let's hear from Mr. Murray Sharkey.
Hello.
Councilman Rushing, Councilman Montoya, Councilwoman, whichever you prefer, Marie Sharkey. First thing I want to say is the representative of the owner, Mr. Gross, was not able to come because of medical reasons. So I'm speaking on behalf of it and the ownership. And I really want to just sit down because it sounds like we're all on the same track. But it's very important we put this in the context of what we have here in Prescott. I come from a small town back east called Brooklyn, and I moved to Arizona in '94. And I used to go to Aqueduct Racetrack, but as soon as I moved here, I went to the old racetrack downtown. And it broke my heart when they stopped doing the racing and they had that silly place out in the meadow. So I've been very, very familiar with Prescott. And I've been working for Sun Home Communities since about 2000. And they own about 1,200 units. They did only own mobile home parks. Now they own apartments and multifamily places. In fact, they bought the Bradshaw apartments. And I did the due diligence for them when they were looking at properties, and they had a little change in their direction. And I came up and looked at this park, and I said, don't buy it. The wastewater's not good, and the water's not good, but they felt it was a good investment. And I'm not a businessman, I'm just a plain old engineer. And you were talking about Water Month. I went to work for the State of New York Environmental Department. The first Earth Day was in 1970. So I've been in the business for a while. And this is a nice town, and as you say, the problems were obvious with the wastewater and the water. I saw the storage tanks for the water, and I saw the wastewater going into the creek. And they spent over $300,000 to tie into the city sewer. So you're getting the water already.
Right.
If you want to be mean guys, you're getting that water no matter what. And then as the water demand is increasing on less water supply, we've had to haul water in. So the point that you said, Councilwoman, is very, very much appropriate. And that's my legal requirement, is health and safety. And the other important thing to look at, and I, along with this, it's not up there, but part of the application pack, it was real simple, a half-page engineering report. We have substantial data from the well records and from individual meters on each unit and from the pumps that take the wastewater back into the city, what our water usage is.
Excuse me, Mr. Sharkley, did you say each unit is individually metered?
That what?
Each unit is individually metered?
As a conservation, that there was
Well-
too much water use.
That is music to my ears.
What's that?
That's music to my ears.
That's why I wanted to give the overview. In order to conserve water, that we now have records from each unit besides from the total park, so that way the owner can, see if there's any abuse. And
that's
the
wonderful.
numbers come out to 5,400 gallons a day is what our total could be. That's with an allowance. And I did make the planning and zoning meeting for this project for last month in March. And without any hesitation, there was 20 additional units put onto a proposed project. And on that basis I do new home developments also, and you're probably talking 500 times 20, which is 10,000 gallons. We're looking at 5,000 or 5,400 gallons for 54 residential units. And by the way, the politically correct thing is it's no longer affordable. You can't talk about what people can afford. It's working class housing. And you folks said it. Yeah, it's right near downtown. We do provide affordable housing for the working class client. And now we're going to spend another $500,000 tying into the water. And we've already been working with the utilities department, and we have the backbone of a plan on how to tie into an existing water line at that intersection of 69 and 89. There is a water line available.
Okay.
And have to thank publicly George. We've been working together since we bought this project. And a few years ago, there was no interest in annexation. Now we understand there is. And it's all a bunch of pluses. So
I'm wondering if I can ask you a question real quick. We touched a little bit on kind of what Matt suggested as part of this annexation process of tying that annexation to the site plan. Do you have any information that would indicate that the company that will own this project will have any reservation with that?
not at all.
Okay.
There's, if you go back to the map, if you can go back to the most recent one. After working with this, not that one, after working with the utility department, we changed our approach, and this is the original one, but then you have one other one you put on there. So this is the original one, but in concurrence with the utility department, this is our program where we tie in at that intersection. And if you look at the lower left-hand side, which I guess would be the southwest portion, that's pretty much open. And that's the well, and that's where the well is, and that's where the, no, within the red line. And that's where the wastewater facility was a long time ago. That's pretty level. As you can see, the contours, if you drove through it last night, it's a high contour area. There's no way you can possibly put in many units. We can put maybe 5 units down in that flat area. So we might be petitioning for additional another 5 units. But that would be it. And it sounds like, from city attorney's point, if we do sell a property and somebody else comes into it, they'd have to come in and seek. And I left it up to George's expertise. The process, as I understand it, and we started off working with planning and zoning and with George's people, is there were 3 steps required in the pre-application process for annexation. There were 3 hurdles. The first one we did last month with P&Z. Hopefully we'll do the second one with you folks today, and then either the end of this month or next month we'll go to the city, and that will allow us to start the full annexation process and fill out the necessary paperwork. And in parallel, we'll be working with the Public Utilities Department to design that system that will take both fire, water, and then we'll tie that into our existing distribution system. And the records show, you have it metered all over the place, coming in and going out. We're looking at 5,400 gallons a day for 52 residences.
Gwen, can I ask a question?
Sure.
About, actually, this is for Gwen, kind of regarding that. Is there some, do we have worm analysis on this location as well? Or I guess the idea would be if we don't, then we would, once they tie in, we will have that?
That's correct, Councilman Montoya. We would not currently have worm information for the site because they use a private well.
Sure.
But once they come on to city services, we will begin to collect data and we'll know exactly how much water they're using.
Okay.
Is there a swimming pool on this property?
No.
Oh, okay, just checking.
No. Too much rock, unless people want to go into the creek when it's flowing.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Sharkey, I really appreciate your ability to be here, and I appreciate you attending both this meeting, the planning and zoning meeting, and answering our questions and helping to allay some of our concerns.
And the important thing, and I was glad to hear you guys say it, I was just going to sit down. We have to look at this in the context of the big picture. And I think that this would be a great advantage for the city.
Yeah.
Okay? Any more questions? I'm here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say?
Any public comment?
No public comment.
Chair, I move to recommend forwarding WSA 21-024 to council for approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it looks like the agenda item passed. And let the record reflect that Mr. Shishka is absent.
Yes.
Vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item C, approval of annual payment to the Arizona Department of Water Resources, ADWR, for 2021 withdrawal and use fee of $9,198.48.
Yes, every year we have various documents that we have to send to the Department of Water Resources by a March 31 deadline, and this includes the annual withdrawal and use report, plus supporting documents like recovery well reports, underground storage reports, conservation efforts, and water quality lab results. And these were all sent in actually by mid-March of this year. So the fees for this year are $9,198.48. And it's recommended that you approve it. And I do also have something that might be of use to you. So I wanted to show this. So state statute requires that we send in the annual report every year. So in the total water, that was, okay. The total water that was pumped to supply all of our customers, okay, was 7,305 acre feet. Now this includes potable and non-potable supply, metered and non-metered. So that's what was pumped from all of our wells in 2021. The total water that was used by our customers was 6,730 acre feet. So this is for residential use is the primary amount that's used every year, about 66.5%. And also the second largest use is from commercial, and that's 17.8% of the volume that is billed every year. So these are metered deliveries to our customers. The total water recharged was 4,331.0 acre feet. Now this is two types of recharge. There's surface water from Watson and Willow Lake, and also reclaimed water from the customers who are connected to our collection, our wastewater collection and treatment facilities. So of this 4,331, 1,580 I'll just round up, 1,581 acre feet was surface water. Effluent was 2,696 acre feet. And then there was an additional permanent recharge known as Prop 400 of 53.93 acre feet. So those three figures together comprise the total recharged for 2021. Now the amount of water that was recovered for use, 2,917 acre feet. This reflects surface water after evaporation, which was 1,570 acre feet. And also effluent was recovered from wells, airport wells 2, 3, and 5, and our recovery well. And that totaled 1,136 acre feet.
Kay, can you repeat that number one more time?
1,136, and it's there on your sheet. It is written out.
Oh, okay,
For the reclaimed supplies. And anything that wasn't recovered in 2021 was placed into our long-term storage account. And this last year, that was around 1,500 acre feet. Are there any questions about the report?
Thank you. I'd just like to make a few comments. ADWR, our groundwater allowance is 9,466 acre feet per year. Is how much we're allowed to pump.
Yes.
And so if you subtract the 7,305, that leaves us 2,161 acre feet, kind of a buffer that we're not using. But this is all we have left for our committed and future growth at this time until the DNO comes out,
Right, correct.
which may even decrease it.
So the Mayor Pro Tem, the total water pumped is not necessarily based just on the groundwater allowance. The city also has other supplies that we do and we can rely on, which is in our current DNO, which gives us over 16,000 acre feet. So it's not just reliant on groundwater. I just want to make
I'm
that
just
clarity.
looking at the wet water versus the alternative paper water. So we basically have 2,161 acre feet year that's allocated for future and committed use. And when I say committed, like, for example, all the vacant lots that we have that aren't built on, but they've already got that water committed, even though they're not pumping anything.
So yes, that is correct. In the water resource management model, we account for existing uses under our current demand. We account for future uses under committed and projected demands in the water resource management model. And under the 2009 DNO, at this time, we believe that we have approximately 1,978 acre feet of water remaining in the city's portfolio for additional development that has already been accounted for. So all those older subdivisions in town, there might be a vacant lot on a street and things like that, those are already accounted for in the committed or projected demands in the worm.
Okay. All righty, any
Yeah, I have a few questions. Thank you, Kay, for the presentation. I just want to clarify something. So when I do the math on these numbers for total recovered use, 1570, 1136, comes out to 2706. The total water recovered for use is 2917. Difference between the 2706 and the 2917 is 211. Is that evaporation?
Well, there's no correlation between the total water recharged and the total water recovered for use.
Okay,
These are two different
Two distinct
items.
numbers, okay.
Yeah, they're two distinct items taken from this year's annual report.
Got it.
These are just snapshots.
Got it, okay. The next question I have is, and I had talked to Gwen about this a little bit, is the amount of recharge increasing year over year?
Well, there was a, it varies with years.
Sure.
So if we have.
I mean, is there a trend line that we can
in
extrapolate
20
from?
In 2020, we had, so should we go to the next one?
We actually have
In 2020, we had a much higher precipitation rate than we did in 2021. So we were able to recharge in surface water in 2020 over 3,000 acre feet, 3,031. But in 2021, we were only able to recharge 1,580 acre feet of surface water. So it varies with how much precipitation we're going to have.
Sure, that makes sense. I guess I'm just kind of, this is kind of, okay.
Yeah, our natural recharge is, with the drought, has been decreased drastically with less snow, less rain,
Right. And you can see that 2017, I believe that
increased overdraft.
it was our best year yet for recharging surface water. And effluent was good that year too, but it's come down since then.
Thank you for that. I appreciate seeing that. Again, I'm curious. The next question I have, looking at this report, is there's some information here about gallons per capita per day, or gallons, per capita per day, which is GPCD. And the trend line on there looks really good historically. But I guess one of my questions is, are there, these are average numbers, I guess, is that correct? Like essentially in the notion that, I think it's the next page that I'm looking at. Well, or you can pull that up.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, there is one in the
There, but I wanted to show my graph, the page 2 of the graph. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
This is why it's good that we meet beforehand, Gwen, because look, you have all this information that I was going to ask you for.
That helps.
That's the goal.
Page 2 I wanted to show.
This is exactly where I was going to go. And I know we can't do apples to apples, right? We're not the same as other municipalities, but
Right.
but I just kind of want to know how we're doing relative to other communities. And again, like this graph looks great. I mean, if I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, Prescott's, on fire for driving down gallons per capita per day, but I just want to know where we stand for other communities too.
Right, and so I did just want to point out that our GPCD in the bottom graph there, that it has dropped pretty well over the years, although this past year it did go from 107 to 112. So
Right,
it did go
but
up
it
a
looks
little
like
bit.
we've maintained below that. We've been in that 100, less than 120 range more or less since 2012. It looks like from what I'm seeing. So that's that's some good progress.
It's a positive trend for sure. Okay, and then
And I am excited to see that other graph or the other table. So
Put it back up.
yeah, please.
Yeah, here, I got it.
Okay.
These are other communities, how they compare.
So I just got this data yesterday, and in response to your interest expressed to Gwen during the meeting last Friday, Councilman Montoya. So for populations that range from 48 to 70,000, we look pretty good. Town of Prescott Valley has maintained a 108. They're among the lowest. They tied with Apache Junction at Arizona Water Company. And the city of El Mirage has a 98 GPCD. But ours at 112 is pretty good, and it is then like the 4th lowest compared to other populations in other cities.
And I guess the reason I asked for this information was because I think that from a staff perspective, that it might be useful to look at some of these things and reach out to a city like El Mirage and say, what are you guys doing over there that's getting it below 100? And maybe they have some external factors that, like, better precipitation rates in their area or feeding their aquifer or whatever, which, that's useful data to know too. But I guess the reason, especially since Gwen's kind of intimated to me that we're moving after the water policy into a conservation policy, it'd be curious to know what are success stories and best practices we can learn from some of our neighbors. And so that was part of why I asked this question, to kind of understand, what is, I think we're doing great. I guess for me, I'm never one to sit on my hands. I always want to continually strive for excellence.
I agree, and I was, Colette Pansini with DWR did tell me that there could be variability due to climate.
Right, and that seems obvious.
Yeah.
And so, again, we are geographically situated where we're geographically situated. We can't do a whole lot about that. But if there are best practices that we don't know about, I would love to know what those might be.
Mm-hmm. I could make some inquiries from the other cities. Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions on the annual report?
Yes, I'd like to make some comments on the bar chart, groundwater pumping and population served.
Yes, I'll try to zoom in on it. That will make it better for you. How's that? Is that a good enough zoom to
Oh, I
be
have it
legible?
right here.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it's nice for the public too.
Yeah. I'd like to draw your attention to, on the left, it says estimated population. And I would just like to know what factors went into that estimated population number. It looks like we're at 45,000. I mean, does it, because we serve water outside our actual city limits. So does that include Chino Valley? Does that include like Mountain Club and areas?
Well,
in
this
the
is based
county?
on the Corolla report that we've been using them for years for our information, and I do not think it includes Chino Valley. I think it's just Prescott population.
Good morning. If the information is from the Corolla report, it is for the water service, the city's water service area. The wastewater master plans estimate population based on 2.1 persons per household. That's based on the last census data. We know how many customers that we serve, and so we use that multiplier to determine our population that we serve. So that's the number that you're seeing here on screen.
So it does include the water service area.
It includes population that we serve within our water service area,
Okay.
yes.
And does it include apartments?
If they are served water by us, it does.
So you just kind of guesstimate the people in the apartments?
We use zoning and densities under the land development code to determine that number as part of Corolla's work.
Okay, and then does it include non-residential use?
Population does not include non-residential uses, no, only residential uses.
So it doesn't include like Yavapai College, Emory-Riddle?
Not in the population estimate, no.
Okay, so it's just residential population in the water service area?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Well, just to, looking at this bar chart, I see that there was comments that there was a dramatic drop when the tiered water policy was introduced for residential. So that really shows you that people were really watching their water bill, and when there was an increase, when they used more water, it looks like it encouraged conservation, which is obviously was the goal of the tiered water policy. But we don't have, this is only for residential, we don't have a tiered water policy for non-residential, am I right?
We have tiered water rates for commercial uses. Those exist in our code as well. And they're included in our total water consumption. But again, this graph is just one way of looking at the information, so it's based on population and water consumption, under the pretense that residential users use commercial water use services and activities, and so that's included in the total water use for the community is listed here.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And then you just kind of look at the general trend here, and it looked like things kind of bottomed out in 2015, the downward trend, and then it turned around 2015 and started going back up in general. Is that true? 2020, 2021?
So again, Mayor Pro Tem, a lot of that is driven by precipitation that we do or do not receive. If we don't receive a good snowpack or a good monsoon, then people are outdoor watering more. So I think it's more indicative of precipitation trends than necessarily population trends. As you know, newer housing units have better building codes than we have had in the past that are more conservation-minded and water sense aware. So
Wasn't 2020 a wet year, though? Wasn't that when we had the 7 inches or something? And
Well, we had over 2 feet of snow in 2020.
yeah, so we did have a wet year and or rain, but our water use still increased. That's kind of, okay, well, we'll have to keep an eye on this and keep up our wonderful conservation measures. And I just would like to thank the community for being such good stewards of this precious resource, because this program is all voluntary. We don't have any restrictions in place or anything like that. Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to make the motion?
Pardon?
Would you like me to make a motion?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I move to approve payment to ADWR in the amount of $9,198.48.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and now we'll move on to agenda item D, infrastructure topic, static water level measurements at city water production wells.
Sorry, I thought I was up.
Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning. How's the subcommittee doing today?
We're a man down, but we're good.
You're a tough
We're
group.
carrying on.
I'm just looking for my overall item. Okay, getting settled in here. So it's a pleasure speaking to you this morning. This is an item that is newer for you, but the previous subcommittee has reviewed it. So what we're going to step through fairly quickly today is city wells, and then we'll look at a status report from the state. So we look at kind of our closer view, and then we look at a bigger view. We'll look at the city maps so you know where we're situated at with these water levels that we're taking, the water levels themselves. And then, as I mentioned, we'll jump over to the department's document they recently produced. And we're going to do this just because we've had, with the previous subcommittees, we walk through with a PowerPoint to get you settled in as to what we're talking about. But today we won't be doing that for the sake of time. On background, I just explained this. This has been seen before. I think it's important to go to the second paragraph. Water levels are taken by the city operations staff and are reported as part of the city's annual water withdrawal and use report. So that's a topic you just saw. Those are required to be fed into that annual report. Two levels. Generally, in the past, when I was doing that report, a January and a July, so you could see two different times of year what things look like. Per the procedures used by the Department of Water Resources and USGS, a static water level means it's taken when the pump is halted for 8 hours or more. So a well, when it's pumping, has a cone of depression. When you turn that pump off, it'll start to level out again. Doesn't go all the way back up because we do need those wells. We can't turn off everything all the time. They need to be pumping. So this is what is a static water level. However, you could have influence by neighboring pumping wells. So I say these things because sometimes people take things as absolutes. And so you have to know in the physical system, there's going to be, we turned it off, but that's not a perfect static water level. Or if somebody shows you a water level and you think, gosh, that seems really low, like deep. You're like, could be influence because the well was on. And that's a pumping level. There's a difference. So let's keep moving. That's the brief for the record piece.
Leslie, I have a question.
ma'am.
Are the flow meters, are they permanently installed on these wells so that you can just look at them anytime you want, or do you have to drop one down and measure, or how do you collect the data?
There can be several ways to do this. I haven't checked in lately with our operations staff, but usually it's what they would call a tape down. So you send a probe down into the well,
Okay.
and that will get you your water level. And so since they are doing this monthly, there's a pretty good record, as you'll see, of the city. Other times you have to use an airline to get the water level measurement. It's just a tricky one to use a standard tape down measurement on it. And then if you're really fancy, you have pressure transducers in these wells. And that's, we have examples of that in our area. We have some of those actually on the monitor wells associated with the big Chino project the city has. So it's a good question. There can be many different ways. The city predominantly is tape down.
Is that the most accurate one, do you think?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Any of those can be accurate. It's the operator knowing what they're doing and repeating it correctly. I think the biggest challenge people have is where you take the measurement from. If the casing is up high and the sounding port's up here, because that can be, you have things up on pedestals, you need to get it back down to ground surface, otherwise you have a 3-foot difference. So standards that are used by the Department of Water Resources, which are also followed by our operations staff, make sure they understand their point of measurement.
Okay.
So all good questions.
Okay. Alrighty, thank
A lot
you.
can go on
Yeah.
with what's going related to data collection. Oh, I think they're all individual. Okay. No worries. All right. So this is important. Let's see if I can drop this back a little bit. That's better. Okay. So this is important because you want to know where your water levels are coming from, these static water levels, and the basic information about them. So starting here, this is the production facility for the city. That's where well 1 is, followed by well 2 here. This pointer isn't very good, but I'll just keep moving it. Well 2. And then 3 is here, 4 is here, and 5 is here. So I'm sure it would have been easier if it just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It didn't. It was a matter of when the city acquired the well. So I'll just do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I can give you a handout on this too, the separate PowerPoint we did back on pumping that this is from. So these are the 5 Chino production wells. Their water level depths can range from about 535 to, I can't even see that up there. I'm going to have to bump it up for my eyes. Here, we'll go to 75. You have long distance, but not in your sight. To 690. Okay, and the pumping capacity is not necessarily important, but they're there for you. And static water levels in the 2000 time period range from 170 to 250 feet below land surface. Okay, let me pull the other well field. Or are these together? Oh, they're together. Look at that. Okay. Okay, let's bump this back a little bit. Well, let me read this first. 3 production wells. The well depths range from 895 feet to 950 feet. Pumping capacity 640 to 1,600 gallons per minute. Static water levels is what we're looking at today, range from 430 feet to 480 feet below land surface. Back this out. Okay. This is airport well 2. 3. 4 is over here, but we don't use it. And then 5. And 6 will be in this general proximity too. Okay, let's look at the water levels. This chart. This is fun. Look at that. I think I better back this off a little bit. Okay, so this is not going to look very different from folks who've joined us in the past, or if you were watching previous ones. These are your Chino Valley water levels. So going through, we'll go top to bottom. Chino Valley 4, Chino Valley 5, 3, 2, and this blue line is 1. We can see the trend lines on there. I don't think this should be much of a surprise to folks if you're in the scientific world, or we're not mobile societies. We don't migrate anymore. When we sit down and we pump in one location, we're going to affect water levels. If you don't have as much natural recharge coming in as you're pumping waters out, you're going to see changes. So here again, just a snapshot from 2007 to 2021. That would be July of 2021 up here. I'm sorry, I probably look at these way too much, so I need to slow down. Of course, your x-axis up here are your dates, so you can check through time what's happening with these water levels. And then the depth to water, of course, we inverted the axis, the y-axis. And so it would be like you're standing here on the ground and saying, okay, this water level is about 170. This water level down here goes down about 210 feet to water. As a footnote, we put on here last time that we didn't put a trend line on number 1 because it's not been measured. It's been under work, that well, for a while and not operating. So as they're working on that site out there, as well as the well, when things start coming back in again, we'll see more information again. Moving down to your airport well field. So this is Airport 5 on the top, so that's the newest well. Airport 3, and then Airport 2. So Airport 2 is kind of on the backside of your golf course. Airport 5 is up off of Ruger, and this one is out by the solar panels, kind of off, still going out Ruger, but this one is kind of smack dab in the middle of Ruger near the airport. So here again, you can see trend lines. I don't think there's any surprise there. We'll put a trend line on 5 when it gets a little bit more information. And I'll pause there. I don't know if you have any questions at this point before I move over to the Department of Water Resources.
Mr. Montoya, do you have any comments?
I'm okay.
Okay, I have a few comments.
Okay.
So on the y-axis, it says BLS is below land surface.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And it looks like the trend for the Chino well field is gradually decreasing,
Yes, ma'am.
the levels. And they're shallower wells. They weren't drilled as deep as the ones at the airport.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is something we would have had in your PowerPoint that we had before. It's based on the geology. So if we're up here at the foothills, let's see if I can get my bearings here, foothills, we're moving off towards Chino this way.
Yeah.
The Chino area is where the aquifer is basically at. We're on the foothills of a mountain. So as you're transitioning from hard rock, moving into where you start getting some of those sandy layers and a little bit of volcanics, and then you move way out into Chino, and that's where you have thicker alluvial and volcanics. So for the but everything moves down gradient. So your water's
flows north.
piling up basically down in the Chino Valley area. That's where you have sandy aquifers and volcanics that support, that's basically the history of Prescott is they had to work in this area. Water supplies weren't keeping up with population. They realized they needed to be in an aquifer. So yeah, the depth we had to drill, the city had to drill much deeper in the airport area than in the little Chino area. And then there's aquarics, is those are under pressure. So that's pushing the water up in the water column. So it's a little more, it's quicker to achieve that supply. You don't have that kind of pressure in the airport well field.
So
much.
even though these wells are newer in the airport area, it looks like airport well 3 and 2 are, well, airport 3 is kind of in a downward trend, and it looks like airport 2 kind of had a little bounce up in its level.
Yeah, I guess you could say it has, sorry, maybe back down here. Yeah, this bounce is what you're looking at up here. Yeah.
So I find that kind of interesting that it's kind of holding its own, I should say.
It could be, we're also at airport, well, anything in the airport area where in some cases, depending on where it's located, it might be influenced by the recharge facility. And that was the purpose of the airport well field, is that the state said in a previous decision order, we need you to start using more of your renewables and relax your groundwater pumping. Don't do so much. Get it around your recharge facility, use your alternative supplies. And the city had the requirement to get at least 2 wells in with certain capacities into that area. And the city's continued to add, obviously, Airport 5, which is your top line on that hydrograph. And then Airport 6 is also going to go into that area to work more from those recharge recovery standpoint, because you have a travel time, of course, from your recharge facility into the Chino Valley area.
Leslie, do we have any idea where Airport 6 will land in relative to these other wells by the airport?
It's going to be, so Airport 5, let's just go back to the picture. It's a good question.
I guess when I say where it'll land, I don't mean physically. I guess I mean like in terms of its like supply. like in terms of like the below land service, or I guess we haven't, have
I
we?
think it's going to be fairly comparable to 5. So this is 5 here. 6 is going to be just kind of neighboring it. So if it helps with history, as part of development, sometimes developers say, hey, you know, we'll give you a piece of land here for a well. But the reality is the land's great, but if the geology is not good below it, then it's not going to work. So Airport 4 was kind of one of those test drills, wasn't productive, but when you get yourself out towards the recharge facility area near the creek area out there, you're going to have much more of, obviously, an influence based on precipitation, you know, and the recharge that comes. I mean, these are our arteries, so any water channel, waterway in the area, that's what helps kind of breathe water back into our aquifer.
So for Airport 6, we've done some test drilling, I assume, then, and have some idea of where it's going to land.
Yeah, I hope, you know, maybe in the future I'll have more connectivity with the water ops side. We keep a good relationship, but in time, the city's going to have to look at having more communication back and forth on between how water resource management portfolio and, I mean, these just go hand in hand.
Right.
So we could get you some more information. I think that would probably be the quickest answer at this point for the sake of time, is if you'd
Yeah,
like more
no, that's
information on
fine.
well 6, we can pull that.
And then I'd like to make a comment. Our wastewater treatment plant discharges, is it called Class A treated water that's as clean as it can possibly be,
Airport.
recharged into the wash where it percolates
Nothing
down?
goes into the wash. So yeah, that would be probably another topic for another time. We can
Okay.
show you the pathways and how recharge works. But the quickest answer, so this picture has your recharge facility. It has 3 feeds into it, one from Sundog, one from Airport. So let's just look at that quickly. So Airport feed's going to come in over here. Effluent from, treated effluent from Sundog is going to come in over here, and your surface water feed comes in from the south. And yes, not only do those waters need to meet certain standards when they leave the wastewater treatment plant, we also have to test at the facility too, as part of our permitting, that when waters are tested in the ground as well, we have to make sure that things are
I just
staying
wanted
in a good condition.
just wanted to make sure the wells weren't pumping too close to the recharge area.
Right. So you want to be within the area of impact, but you want the biological kind of filtering action to happen. So this one is, 2 is upstream, basically. So the mound would have to form significantly, but we know how gravity works, and the water's going to be pulled this direction, basically, and following the sediments this way. We do have, we're not talking about this today, static water levels in the monitor wells around the facility. So we have to monitor around the facility itself to make sure that we don't have any daylighting in the creek. We don't have any mounding that is becoming problematic. Our permits are pretty clear in safety measures that are required.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
We have
Very
so much we
thorough.
can talk about.
I know. What
So
a
much fun, but we better get moving,
fascinating.
right? Keep moving. Okay, let me pull the last piece that I thought might be helpful. So this report, you have a link in your packet on that memo. So this is fairly new, and what they're looking at is statewide groundwater level changes from 2018 to 2019, so a one-year period, 2009 to 19, 10-year period, and then a 20-year period as well. I clipped out only things that were important, I thought, for you today. This is a much larger report, and of course you don't have time for going through the entire thing, but obviously this is the state of Arizona. This is the Prescott Active Management Area. We're probably sitting right about here in this little blob of polygon. Let me use proper terminology, the polygon. I pulled figure 2 for you. It's the water level change distribution per basin for 2010 and 1-year time periods. And let's look at the header here. So this is a water level change. We need to bump this up. This is really tricky to read. Let's go a little bit more. Well, what was that all about? There we go. You have too many things open, I think. Okay. So this is your 0. So if there's changes, in a negative way, in feet, positive, this direction. And what we want to look at here is we're in the Little Chino Valley. So you're a 2 sub-basin AMA. The city's production is in the Little Chino Valley. This is for 1 year, so this is a 0. So for that 1 year, they said, yep, there's some changes for the negative and some positive. Let me just get you back situated. So negative is going to be left, positive to the right. When you look at Little Chino Valley based on their water levels for a 10-year period, they show some more heavier negative and some positive. And then when you look at it in a 20-year time period, more negative. So what they're saying is you saw from your production well side, basically 2007 to present. And so it's a very short time period. They're looking at a much longer time period so they can see how the declines have happened in a greater time period. So this is available in that report. And our other basin is the Upper Agua Fria, so it's available there as well to see changes. The Upper Agua Fria behaves differently than the Little Chino to some extent. And then let's back out because this is very big. Okay. So this is the same polygon, the Prescott Active Management Area. This is the sub-basin boundary line. Up here is the Little Chino. This is the Upper Agua Fria. The city's pumping is generally in this area. This is where the Chino well field is. And then the airport well field is roughly in this position here. So what it's showing, and that's why legends are important. Let's bump this up so you can read it, and then we'll scroll around a little bit. So it's a groundwater level change in feet, and this is also, they're set at below land surface. So the bigger the red dot, the greater the change in the negative, and then the bigger the dot in the blue is when there's been gains, where the water levels have gone up. So here's the airport for your reference here. So we have some wells operating in this area. Let's see. And then here we also have. So we do see red. I think we have to be careful once again in that we know that we're not migratory peoples anymore. So if you sit in one spot and you pump, you're going to see water level changes. This blip over here where you see a positive, Granite Creek runs through here. The recharge facility is also there. So you can get an entirely different read depending on where you are in the AMA and what water level you're looking at. So I remind you of that because you have many constituents that come and are very, 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 very concerned. And we have to be monitoring and preparing for the future and being clear in how we're describing these things. So over here on the margin of the basin, of course, that's not aquifer material. That's pretty much hard rock. So you're going to evacuate those fractures. And you're going to see water level changes go down. It's the same thing up here. You can see there are no monitor wells up here because there really isn't a point. The city learned long, long ago that pumping around the courthouse was not going to serve the needs of this community. These are our friends in Prescott Valley, so where their well fields are generally housed. And I guess that the intent today is just to give you another source. We can look at, I think the important takeaway here is you can look at your production wells and see the water level changes. Those are going to be more important for an operator and for, on the operations side to say, do we need to reset a pump lower for some reason? Then that's what we do on that side. When you want to talk water overall in the active management area and the aquifer itself, you want to be looking more at a more composite, longer-term pictures that the state can provide. And here's the final note, is that they are doing what they call a basin sweep. And so they're going to try, who's they? The Department of Water Resources has practices where they come into the area every 5 years and they try to measure every single well they can. So I'd be surprised if our operations staff hasn't been contacted already to halt wells, in a random, not random, but an intentional sequence, but take some offline so they can become static-ish, so they can take a water level measurement and it'll go into these bigger databases held by the state. And that's all I have for you today. Unless you have other questions or have information you were looking for, we have it generally. Ready to go.
Yeah, I have one comment. Thank you. That was very helpful, and it shows actually that there is a positive effect pretty immediately, it looks like, on recharge on the well levels. And as I understand, Prescott Valley pumps their water from the Little Chino, but their recharge facility recharges into the Agua Fria.
They're a mix. So I have it up on the screen here. So they have wells south of Highway 89A. That's kind of the break point, and then they have some on the other side of or the sub-basin line. And then, yes, they do recharge. Their facilities are in the upper Agua Fria.
Okay, because it seems to me that would explain why the upper Agua Fria levels would be increasing, because it doesn't get pumped as much.
I think with the upper Agua Fria, that pushes quite a bit of water around too. So yeah, it's just the geology is different. The direction of flow, surface water wise and groundwater wise, are different. This bifurcated, two-minded AMA we're in. One water goes one way and water goes the other way.
Okay,
Yeah,
all righty. Okay, well, thank you.
you're welcome.
All righty, and no formal actions going to be taken. This was an item just for discussion. And then moving on to Agenda Item E, discussion regarding the second draft of the 2022 Water Management Policy. And this is also just for discussion. Thank you.
Hi, Gwen.
Hi, I'm back.
What is this, meeting 7?
If we're counting, yes.
The policy is growing. It's getting bigger.
I think it's probably about the same size, yeah. And today, I think we can have discussion if you like, but I think more than anything, I'm just going to hit kind of the high points of the policy and summary of where we've landed after these many meetings and discussions, and to let you know what you can expect to see at the voting meeting on April 26th. And at the end, I'll talk about the timeline and how the community can still provide input if they choose to do so. So there are 23 different policies within the document. Some of the bigger items are what I'm going to touch on here and go through rather quickly, but if you have questions along the way, please ask. Number one, a site plan or a plat will accompany all new water requests that are over 1 acre feet that are not in an existing contract. I probably should have written that up here. But things that are in existing contract that would not apply to, but if you're asking for new water from the water budget, a site plan or a plat has to accompany that request. The next major change is that administrative approvals will be performed for multifamily residential that have up to 8 dwelling units, or 4 dwelling units for single-family residential that do not trigger a subdivision requirement, or any commercial project that's less than 1 acre foot. Those will be administratively approved under the new policy. Those will be tracked and reported to the subcommittee and the council on a biannual basis. Also, the water use estimates will be updated annually in January in the water resource management model, which we have done for a number of years now. The citywide average will be determined each January for single-family residential, multifamily residential, and landscape uses. So those determinations will be made as the model is updated on an annual basis. We will be using the water resource management model for new development water use estimates. If we can find a similar use within the WRM, we will use that. Or if they can provide us with water bills from an existing facility that is of like size and uses, we'll accept that. And if neither of those things can be done, then we will request a demand analysis. For redevelopment areas, we will track those water uses administratively if the new use uses less water than the previous use. Again, we're going to be reporting to the Water Issues Subcommittee and the Council on a biannual basis
several of these policies and how they're tracking, and this will be one of those. All existing contracts will be tracked administratively and reviewed biannually as far as what they're allowed to have and what they have, what has gone through administrative review, either with a plat or permits through community development. New development must connect to sewer and return 75% of the water sold as wastewater. Water budgets will be set biannually in December and June for 6-month periods for both commercial and residential. And new water requests cannot exceed 50% of the budget that is currently available within that water budget period, or they may file an appeal if they require more water than is available to them.
Gwen, on that appeal part, have you guys determined what that process looks like at this point, or is that still developing?
As a general rule, we know how it will develop, but we'll actually write a standard operating procedure for that.
And I guess procedurally, when that appeal, I guess my question is like, where would it, for the body politic part of it, how would you envision it working?
So we would we would require them to submit a written request. Staff would evaluate it and have a conversation with the applicant about where we're at in the budget period. Would they have to wait 2 or 3 months, perhaps, to wait for the next budget period, or would they prefer to seek an appeal? We would discuss with them what grounds they felt they could propose to appeal the 50% rule. And of course, anyone who would be seeking more water than the budget would ultimately allow would have to go through the appeal process. So after staff evaluates the proposal, if the applicant wishes to move forward, then we would schedule it for Water Issues Subcommittee, who would make a recommendation, and then it would go to council for a vote of approval or denial.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Another policy that existing contracts may not increase the number of lots or the volume of water without seeking.
What number are you on? What policy?
I didn't actually number them. I'm just hitting kind of the highlights of them.
Because I have a question on
Sure.
policy 12 and 13.
Okay.
I'm looking at the redlined version and then the unredlined version. And I remember at our last council meeting, Mayor Philgood recommended that we have a 25 acre feet year in our budget for residential, and I see that the actual number was eliminated in the clean copy.
So
When did that happen?
that's an excellent question. So the policy says that we will set a budget. After we adopt the policy, we'll have a second motion to set the amount of the budget for the 6-month period that we're in. So staff is currently tracking all water requests that have come in since January. So when we come to you for the vote at the end of April, we will tell you how much water we've already allocated in the January to June budget period for 2022.
Okay.
And recommend, obviously the mayor recommended 25 acre feet, and then council will approve the budget for the January to June of 2022 budget period.
Chair, if I can ask a question.
Sure.
So regarding that, as I recall that meeting, it was 25 acre feet per commercial and also 25 for residential.
That was the recommendation.
And,
yes.
and I guess my question to you is, you said you're tracking it prior to this, and I know this is a question I've already asked you, so bear with me here. But do you feel confident at this point where we're at, because it's like the 5th of April now, do you feel that 25 is a reasonable mark for both residential and commercial based on what we're tracking right now?
For the January to June budget period, yes, I do.
Okay. And do you have any inclination around, because I know that part of what I think some people lose in this is that a lot of these projects, when you're coming to us with the water service application, it's initiated months and months ahead of that, So I guess, do you have an inclination that will also be a sufficient level for, you're guessing, right? But do you have a notion that from June to the end of, or I guess July to, the end of the year, it'll also be sufficient?
So we have processes that happen prior to prior to an applicant requesting water. One of those is pre-application conference. During those processes, we get a good idea of what may be coming forward within the next 6 to 12 months. And so that's something the staff can anticipate as we bring future budgets to you on things that are either have come in that we know are going to use or exceed more than that amount, so we can make you aware of that when you set the budget for the next period. Or if the project is seeking water that is larger than the overall budget, then we would most likely bring those requests to you outside of the budget.
Right. And I guess so it sounds like this is a good starting place, the 25. I don't know if the mayor picked that number off the top of his head or researched it heavily.
Phil, very
We
researched.
researched
That was a
it.
joke. That was a joke.
We researched it. I think it's a good starting point, and as we use the policy, I think we'll identify areas where we might need to change it a little bit, and staff will bring those to you as we have those biannual discussions about where we are having difficulty implementing the policy or where we see struggles from the applicants. We'll bring those to you biannually.
Gwen, I'd like to make a comment. Since we kind of have a number out there, is there any way, I think maybe the public might be happy if we have that 25 acre feet included in here as kind of a general idea, starting point, so that people know that this is kind of in the ballpark.
I can put it in the
Include
staff.
that.
I could put it in the staff memo if you would like, but if I put it in the policy, then you have to amend the policy if you decide to change the number. Whereas the policy says that every 6 months you will set the amount for the next 6-month period. So
Or we could say, for example, for 2021 or 2022, this
20
is
we'll say it in the
where
staff
we're
report.
at. So people kind of have a general idea, so it doesn't look like it's kind of open-ended and can have big swings one way or the other.
Gwen, I have another question. I think this is in the same area of what we're talking about, but I guess in my mind I'm thinking of Policy 11, where we're talking about there's an order of operations, it sounds like, where staff will report out what is getting received, or the amount of water, the requests that are being made. And then we'll set the budget in June and December. And I'm just wondering if it might make sense to have that informative part happen prior to the allocation part or the adjustment of the budget. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do. And that's a little bit of a conundrum because we don't know how much water we're giving until we're at the end of the period.
Right. It seemed from my reading of it, it's just kind of, it seems like it's here's what you used and this is what you just approved. It just seems like it may be out of sequence, but I don't know if there's a solution to that.
We'll take a look at that.
Okay.
So existing contracts cannot increase the number of lots or the volume of water. So contracts outside city limits must contain performance criteria and are limited to City Code 2-1-8. So last Wednesday, no, I'm sorry, not last Wednesday, March 29th, I placed draft number 2 of the water policy on the city website, and within the notice, it said that the amendment to 2-1-8 would be up on the website by tomorrow, and it will be up on the website by tomorrow. Still working with the legal department on the final wording, but essentially the water outside the city limit, there will only be 2 exceptions to that. One is for federal, state, county, local government, schools, fire districts, but not water districts or special districts. So rather than using the term political subdivision, we're just going to call out every type of entity that we would enter into an intergovernmental agreement with. Again, federal government, state government, county government, local government, school districts, fire districts, but not water districts or special districts for special interests. At the last work study, I discussed with council the possibility of allowing a single-family residential exception where a single-family residence abuts a water main, connects to sewer, and if they have a well, they would abandon that back to the city. And the council seemed receptive to that exception, so we will include that. That will be separate from the policy. That will actually be in City Code 2-1-8.
So you're going to have that language in there too?
We will.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question regarding that? Is there, like, let's say that those exceptions, like that, the single-family exception specifically, so let's say that someone abuts a main and has a well that they're willing to abandon, but they're not connected to sewer. Are they just not able to, is there an option for them to petition to get connected into sewer, or how does that work?
So if they don't abut a sewer main, they have the option of extending it.
Well, I guess that's what I mean, like, or if they're not, so it's abutting the sewer as well, I guess, is when you say.
To fall under this exception, they would have to connect to sewer.
Okay. And that seems reasonable. I just want to make sure I understand. It's not like they are to, because I know in the last voting session we had an annexation that we approved where some of those folks were already connected to sewer, some of them weren't. Most of them were on wells. I think one of them wasn't. It was just a mess.
Right.
And so I want to make sure we're not like being a little bit too myopic and being like, well, it's really constrained. Because I think this exception is a really good exception. And I think it's appropriate. And it says to folks that, hey, if you want to participate in helping us, capture your water back into the aquifer and you want to let go of your well, and it's a win-win for the city, we'll give you water outside of our city limits.
Yeah, it won't promote urban sprawl or anything like that. It's just on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
And a question about that. Do you think this exception would satisfy the vast majority of requests for water outside of the city limits that you get?
I do. Yes. From the requests that we receive in the permit center, I do.
Mm-hmm. And it might help us get some fire hydrants out there in underserved areas for public safety. If we,
Most of these water mains already exist, Mayor Pro Tem.
oh, okay,
So,
thank you.
let's see, where was I at? New development must use or shall use water sense fixtures and low water plants. Existing wells shall be abandoned in order to receive water service. And the city may accept extinguishment credits if they're needed to meet water demands for a project on a project-by-project basis. That's a may, not a shall. So that's the general overview of the policies within the new 2022 water management policy. Are there any questions about the policies themselves?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
I guess you've spent a lot of time and energy on this, and I know you haven't done it alone. I know that this probably runs the whole gamut of the entire city staff. And so first off, I just want to say thank you for doing that. This has been identified as a priority for the community. They identified it in the last election. I would argue that they even started identifying it in the election that brought Mayor Pro Tem to council. So I'm grateful that city staff has been responsive to these needs of the community and expended a lot of time and energy. I guess, generally speaking, this is a more involved and complex policy than we previously had. And I think when people hear that, they have the perception that we're creating a lot of red tape or making it a lot harder for people to do business in the city or to even build a home if that's what they're seeking to do. I can see both sides of that argument, I guess. I'm more inclined to say that we have an obligation to preserve our natural resources and that we should take that seriously. But from a staff perspective, for managing our water resources and giving guidance to those who are seeking water, do you think that this water policy as it's presented today is an improvement from what we currently have?
Councilman Montoya, I would say that it provides better clarity to the staff and to our citizenry or our customers that come in seeking water. It gives them better clarity as to what the steps they would have to take, the constraints they need to work within, and the requirements the city would have for them. So yes.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because, again, I think it's, people talk, and I had a constituent call me today, and expressed some concerns about the water policy. And he said that it will drive away business. And I work in business and I work in capital markets. And I will tell you, one of the things that drives markets or business crazy is uncertainty. And so I think in some ways we're taking a lot of the uncertainty out of what it takes to get water in this community off the table. We're saying these are the rules of the road. This is the playbook that you need to play by. And this is how you get water. And it's not saying that, we don't want to have business come to Prescott. It's not saying we don't want people to build homes here or to move to Prescott. It's just saying we have a mandate from ADWR to be safeguarding our aquifer. And so this is how we're choosing to do it. And I also think something that's useful for the general public to be aware of is that this is not a policy that is going to exist without oversight either, obviously. And I think you spoke to that pretty well too in this presentation, is that, in addition to Water Issue Subcommittee reviewing some of the water budget and some of the other pieces, we're also going to have the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee that will oversee this policy as well. And obviously, the council at large can at any time request to say, we're getting a lot of really negative feedback about X portion of this policy and we need to address it. So I think I'm not one to necessarily favor increased regulation, but I think in this case, we owe it to our community to safeguard this resource. So those are my thoughts, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Well said, and I agree. I'd like to focus our attention on the attachments. I'm a detailed person, and this is a legal document, as we know. And I got a copy of our 2018 draft of the water budget. And the maps were much more clear. All the maps in this attachment are hard to read. The font's too small. And there's some incorrect information on these maps. For example, it doesn't include the Stringfield Ranch or Section 33, which we are supplying water to now, as examples of water outside our city limits. And I would just like to have the map of the water service area be updated to include Section 33 out there on Highway 89A and the Stringfield Ranch at the intersection of Pioneer Parkway and Williamson Valley Road, and then also update the chart here that says include water improvement districts and water outside the city limits. It's one of the major changes, but I would just like to see, instead of these kind of generalized blue, I call them the blue blobs, show, you can go to the county and get better maps and include, I'd like to see the subdivisions included, where Deepwell Ranch is, where Granite Dells Estates, AED, where our subdivisions are, even on the south side, Timber Ridge, and just have more details. Show the airport, that's very critical, and some of the areas, details around the airport. Just kind of more of a detailed overview, if it's possible. But just increase the font so at least we can read it, and just, little things like that.
Okay.
And then I'd like to also, City of Prescott prospective annexation areas. I think I'd like to just eliminate that, because it has this map and then it shows the Cactus Mobile Home Ranch. Like, is that our whole plan of annexation going forward? I think we should eliminate that and let the general plan have a map like that so that it's voter approved. I just think it's kind of out of place. I don't see any rhyme or reason.
I think that future annexations change very quickly. It changes over time, so perhaps that's a map that we would update on an annual basis.
Yeah.
I think it's important to know where future annexation areas might come from, because of course, most of them lie within our water service area.
But we'll
Well-
work with community development,
Yeah.
see what we can do.
Because if you want to talk about future prospective annexation areas, there's section 32, which is right adjacent to the airport, so that's not included in here. There's that possible area off of Iron Springs Road that's still in the county, that's an affordable housing area. Then there's this big white area that's in the county, that's where, the Emery-Riddle area. I just think those are possible areas that have been in discussion, but I don't know if they should belong in the water service area. I think it's just more, I don't know, general plan issues for that committee. That's my opinion.
Okay. Any other comments?
I don't know, any public comments?
Yes, we have Leslie Hoy. Go ahead, Leslie. Leslie, we can't hear you.
Oh,
Now we can.
um,
Hi, Leslie. We can hear you.
oh. I'm unmuted.
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Are you there? Okay, this is a new form of Zoom apparently, and I had all sorts of problems getting on here this morning, so pardon me. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody again for all the work on the policy, and I think it's great policy for some of the same reasons that Councilman Montoya cited. I just have one substantive question about policy 10, which in the draft it says all new development projects shall connect to and be served by the city sewer system prior to physical delivery of any water service by the city. And then the change says new non-residential development projects shall return no less than 75% of the water. But did you mean for residential to also be included? I'm just wondering, why is residential not included in the requirement to return no less than 75%? And then also, I just wondered why it says of 75% of the water is sold as wastewater to the city water reclamation facility, what that wording means there.
Thank you, Leslie, for your question. We actually discussed this at the March 22nd meeting. We, as staff, we are confident that new construction, new single-family, new residential construction under our current building codes meets the 75% return of water for potable water use within the dwelling unit. So we removed the reference to residential because we felt it was redundant based on another policy that says they must use water sense fixtures and low water plantings in new development. The concern is that commercial uses may come that may not return up to 75% of the water. So that's why the language was changed in policy 10.
Gwen, do we have information in the worm of commercial instances that don't return 75%?
I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head.
I'm sorry, I did not
That's
forecast
okay.
that one to you. It just
That's okay.
occurred to me in the moment.
That's okay.
I guess, Bren, do you feel confident that the land development code addresses that issue with regards to the residential return of water?
Well, actually, it wouldn't be found in the land development code. As Gwen mentioned, the building code
Building code, okay.
actually,
Yeah, sure.
confirms the water sense fixtures and the requirements for current new housing. So I think that you guys can be comfortable that the building code addresses that as currently adopted.
Okay. Sorry, Leslie, I didn't mean to take
Okay.
it away from you.
Any more
Hey, can I
comments?
say one thing?
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay. It's so hard to tell what I'm doing here from my desk. Okay, well, that explains the answer to that question. Since I haven't seen the new PCC 218, that did have this, a 70% figure in it about residential projects returning outside city limits, returning 70%. So maybe they should both say the same number, but I haven't seen the new PCC 218 yet, of course. So maybe you already fixed that. And
Yes,
then
we did.
my other part of that question is, why does it say 75% of the water sold as wastewater? I'm just wondering why that wording, and instead of saying 75% of the effluent or some other kind of wording. I'm just curious about that.
That was the language we chose to make it the most clear that we were seeking a 75% return of wastewater from the water that's sold. We had other language in there, but it wasn't as clear as this language, so that's why we changed it.
So you mean,
So if the water passes through your meter, 75% of the water that passes through your water meter
okay, well,
must go
maybe other
back to the
people
sewer.
understand it, and I'm just,
Yeah, because when you said water sold, I was thinking, we sell wastewater for dust control, that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. Okay. But you're talking potable water, all right.
Yes.
All righty. Anything else, Leslie?
okay. So that's what. Okay, I understand that. Thank you. I have a couple of other quite anal. Pardon me?
Pardon? You broke up there.
I have a couple of other somewhat copy editing comments, and I'll just go ahead and submit those through the website.
Okay.
So
All righty.
in for this, I think it's going to be a great policy.
Yeah, or you can just send them to me too. Be sure and copy me on your editing comments. Okay, thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right. Any general announcements from the staff?
Not quite done.
Oh,
Just one more thing. I just want to.
Sure will.
I thought usually when we hear from Leslie, that's the,
True enough. True enough.
the signal, we're done.
Yep, I just wanted to let the public know that the changes to 2-1-8 as well as the second draft are on the city website. They're still there. You can submit comments up through April the 12th on both documents, and we are tentatively planning to take this to council for adoption on April the 26th. So those are our steps going forward, and then we'll start working on a new policy.
I think we're on the home stretch with this task. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Wait, we do have general
Oh, you do have a
Hold
general
on.
announcement, okay.
Last thing, I promise. Okay.
I take back my
Adjournment.
hammer here.
Yeah, can you re-adjourn very
Okay.
quickly? Thank you.
Okay, this meeting has been reconvened.
Thanks. I appreciate that. April is Water Awareness Month in the state of Arizona. And there is a rainwater harvesting exhibit at the library viewery. It'll be there the entire month of April. There's a Granite Creek cleanup, which is hosted by Prescott Creeks, and that's scheduled for April 23rd. Earth Day is going to be an actual event also this year in person. It's sponsored by Greater Prescott Outdoors, and that's also on April 23rd. The Highland Center's Spring Grow Native online plant sale will start April 5th, oh, that's today, through May 5th, and they'll be able to pick up their plants shortly thereafter on May. The Highland Center is also having a water awareness festival. It's focused mainly for the little kids. That's going to be on April 30th from 9 to 12.
How little?
Well, they do a lot of different activities for all kinds of age groups. Different age groups will be able to participate. And of course, there'll be parental supervision for a lot of those activities.
Fair enough.
The Yavapai County Contractors Association's Home and Garden Show is April 29th, 30th, and May 1st. And Leslie had a great idea to put a Water Smart decal on the back of our water and wastewater ops trucks. And there's going to be a contest of if you spot them, and you can get on Facebook and say, yeah, I saw a truck, or I want to leave a comment. And there will be 4 gifts given away each Friday of the month. And I also just want to mention that the Arizona Department of Water Resources does have a website. It's newazwater.gov, news, articles, and then if you go to 2022-3103, which is the date, there are all kinds of different activities happening, classes that you can zoom in on during that month of April. So that's it for general announcements. Oh, one more?
So I just think it's appropriate today to introduce our new Public Works Director, Ashley Couch. Started with us on Monday. We're very excited that he's here at the City of Prescott, so welcome.
Greetings. I'm really excited to assume this new role, and I look forward to working with this subcommittee as well as the mayor and council going forward to try to make sure that the things that are important to you become real, and we focus on those things and are providing the services and the projects that the mayor and council want us to provide in an efficient manner, in a cost-effective manner, and also that we provide exceptional customer service. And so I look forward to serving the citizens of Prescott and the business owners in this new capacity. I'm excited and enthusiastic. And I've been in local government for 25 years, and I have a passion and enthusiasm for local government and public service that I hope to be able to improve the community and see some tangible results over time. And so anyway, I'm grateful to the city for this new opportunity and look forward to working with everyone in this new role.
Yeah, well, thank you. As you know, public works and infrastructure are pretty much our main purpose as a municipality. So welcome.
Thank you.
Indeed, welcome aboard.
Thank you
Look
very
forward
much.
to working with you and getting you situated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's it. All righty, okay.